Hello and welcome to a special live broadcast from the USA Today Network previewing the New Jersey High School State Wrestling Tournament. I'm Ryan Ross, and I will be joined by a panel of our wrestling experts from around the state to take a look at the contenders in each of our weight classes. From APP.com, we have Steve Falk. From NorthJersey.com, we have Sean Farrell. Andy Mendelowitz joins us from MyCentralJersey.com. Tom McGurk joins us from CourierPostOnline.com. And last but not least, Andrew Tracinsky joins us from NJHerald.com and DailyRecord.com. Guys, thank you all for being here today. Before we get into our weight classes, I just wanted to quickly get everyone's thoughts on the season so far, because obviously this season has been far different than any one that we've seen, that any season that any of you have covered in this sport. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on how everything has gone so far and what has stood out to you as we quickly go around the table. And Steve Falk, let's start off with you and just your thoughts on this crazy season thus far.
First of all, it's strange that we're talking about wrestling on April 15th. Usually it would have been over 6 weeks ago. Second, it was strange that we started on March 16th. And the thing that's really stood out to me is the last 2 weeks, coaches were faced with the decision. Should I wrestle my guys that are surefire qualifiers for the region tournament, or should I not? There were some that rested their guys, and there were some teams that haven't had their best wrestlers wrestle since April 1st. There were other teams that wrestled their best wrestlers through last week. Now, what's the right course? We're going to find out this weekend, because who knows what kind of condition some of these guys are going to be in.
Is that what else have we noticed from this season, Sean? Just your thoughts of covering this, and obviously things much different.
Yeah, definitely. I think there have been some pluses and minuses this season. The unfortunate part is that the dual wrestling season has really been compromised. As Steve touched upon, some of our best wrestlers from around the state, have been afraid to wrestle the last week or two because they don't want to put their individual season in jeopardy. From a North Jersey standpoint, we're really looking forward to Bergen Catholic, Del Barton, and St. Joe's, going at it for wrestling supremacy this year. All three were supposed to wrestle against each other in duels, and none of those happened. We didn't have a state team tournament, so we still have so many questions left unanswered. But I would say the positive step is that we're at the individual stage. We had 11 girls who were crowned state champions last week. We'll have 14 more in 2 weeks in Phillipsburg. And I'm sure if you ask coaches, wrestlers, parents, fans, if you could have one or the other, the dual or the individual, almost everyone would say the individual is the priority. So just the fact that we've gotten to this point, we're so close to crowning state champions, I think that's a huge success.
What else has stood out to anyone this year? Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Ryan, how often do you get a chance to see, for me, one positive in an otherwise kind of chaotic season was watching wrestling outside. I was able to cover, Morris County's first outdoor match in history out on the football field at Jefferson. Never did I think I would see something like that where, just the echo in the valley and stuff like that. Up in North Jersey near me, in Sussex County, what will be interesting is some kids only wrestled, 3-4 dual meets. How is their kind of tank going to be tested against some of the top competition in the state? Just the endurance for these guys. I know a lot of them, the top wrestlers will wrestle club. Will that kind of work to their benefit? So I'll be curious to see, once they're going up against a lot of the top competition, what's their endurance like, against some of the other top guys in the state? What's that going to be like for some of those guys that only had 2, 3, 4 dual matches over the course of the season?
Yeah, definitely a strange season. Andy or Tom, your thoughts on what you've seen, Andy?
Well, just going to what Andrew said, I had one coach tell me he had to get used to driving home after practice in the daylight. Usually it's dark and dreary at around 6 o'clock. So that was at least one bonus in an otherwise unusual season.
And Tom, last but not least.
Yeah, just some of the dual meets that didn't get contested. Like Sean said, Kingsway was one of our better programs down here in the South. They were scheduled to wrestle against Bergen Catholic and St. Joe Montvale and Northern Hunterdon, but didn't get the chance to do that when their programs got shut down because of the COVID. So that was a little disappointing. But we've gotten to the individual tournament. I think everybody is happy about that.
Yes,
And I think we can all agree that if we had the normal calendar and we started in December, we probably wouldn't have gotten to this point.
Well, we're happy to be here at this point, and we're happy to preview this tournament that's coming up. With the tournament right around the corner, we're going to get into our weight classes now. We're going to go through every weight class, and our team here, they will highlight 2 finalists that they are predicting to be there in the championship. So we're going to highlight 2 prediction finalists. We also might throw in maybe another guy or 2 to keep an eye on in this tournament. But we are going to start with the 106 weight class for our finalist predictions. And our first finalist comes to us from St. Joe's Metuchen. Andy, take it away. Who do we have?
All right, Nico Khalil. He's a veteran at 106. Last season as a sophomore, he entered the state tournament as a top seed after winning District 15 and Region 4 titles. He missed a podium, though, after losing in the quarterfinals on his first consolation match by decisions. He ended up podium 4. As a freshman, he reached the 4th round of WrestleBacks in Atlantic City. He wrestled the last 2 seasons at Watchung Hills before he transferred to the Middlesex County School.
So that's our first finalist prediction there for 106. And our second prediction comes to us from Mount Olive. Andrew, who do we have?
Yeah, Jack Besterica, a sophomore from Mount Olive, looking to become the school's first state champion since 1988. A kid that also didn't make states last year, but he has that pedigree. He won the New Jersey Intermediate Championship at 80 pounds entering high school and won 24 matches entering this season. Kind of made some waves. He won at his weight in the Mobbin Classic, and he enters the postseason with a 9-0 record and the number 2 seed behind Riverdale's Taisei Karachi.
So those are our 2 wrestlers to watch, our finalist predictions for the 106 weight class. Let's move right along. Let's go to 113 now and meet our first finalist prediction. That guy comes to us from Brick Memorial. Steve Falk, who do we have?
Evan Talmage, who is a transfer from Brick Township. Last year, he was 4th in the state at 106 pounds, where he lost in the semifinal to Anthony Santaniello, who is now his Brick Memorial teammate. He is unbeaten this year. He is a 2-time state qualifier. He transferred to Brick Memorial basically to be with his friends, Anthony and Vincent Santaniello, who we're going to meet coming up in a few minutes.
So that's our first finalist prediction for 113. Our second one comes to us from Eastern. Tom McGurk, who do we have?
Yeah, out of the South region, it's going to be Eastern's Jared Bruner. The junior is 7-0 this season. He's got 81 career wins. He placed 8th in the state last year at 106 pounds. And he's attempting to become Eastern's first state champion since 2011 when Rob Deutsch won his 2nd crown.
So Talmage and Bruner, 2 guys that we are predicting for our finalists, but however, there are 2 other wrestlers that maybe could make some noise in this tournament, especially at this weight class for 113. We head to Roxbury to meet our first, I guess you could say, guy that could contend at this weight class. Andrew, who do we have?
Absolutely. Luke Stanich. Last season, he wrestled at 106, jumps up, and, at 106, he reached the state semifinals, beat Nico Khalil in the quarterfinals. He ended up 6th in the state and won 35 matches as a freshman, which was pretty impressive. And this season, all 9 of his wins, he's pinned all 9 of his opponents. So he'll be looking to become Roxbury's first state champ since 2014.
And one more option we have at 113, a wrestler that can make some noise in this tournament, comes to us from Southern, Steve Falk.
And he will be in the South region with Jared Brunner of Eastern. Connor Collins is the 2nd seed. He was an overtime defeat away last year in the state tournament from being a state medalist at 106 pounds. His only loss this year was 2-1 to Talmage on March 26th, so he absolutely certainly is in the mix. And the potential 113 South final could tell us a lot about what might happen at this weight next week.
That should be a fun weight to watch. We gave you 4 guys for that one. We're going to move up now to 120, and we're going to stick with Steve Falk because our first finalist prediction at the 120 weight class, again, comes to us from Brick Memorial.
Yes, Brick Memorial is very top-heavy. Anthony Santaniello, a sophomore and a good friend of Evan Talmage, who we just talked about, his only defeat in his 2 scholastic seasons came in last year's state tournament, 3-1 to Kinnelon's Evan McGowan on a last-second takedown. He is a pinning machine. When he gets on top of you, you almost have no chance to get out. I mean, I think this is his time.
And a name you just mentioned there, we go to Andrew for our finalist prediction number 2 at 120.
Yeah, Kinnelon's Evan Mugalian. Obviously, last season made the run, kind of an incredible run to win Kinnelon's first state title, knocking off Santaniello 3-1 in the championship match. He's stacked up some big wins. Also last year, he beat Del Barton's Tyler Vasquez, the top seed in this weight class, North 2, in a 7-6 decision to win the Morris County tournament final. So a guy looking to win his second in a row here.
Those are our predictions for the 120 weight class. Let's keep moving right along. We go up to 126 now. And Steve Falk, a last name and a school that I think people are going to be familiar with. Back to Britain where we go.
Yeah, we're back with another Santaniello. This one is senior Vincent Santaniello. By the way, the Santanellos are the son of Vince Santaniello, who is a former state runner-up for Brick Memorial and runs the Sure Thing Wrestling Club. Vincent Santaniello was the state finalist last year at 120 pounds, where he lost 1-0 to St. John Vianney's Dean Peterson. He is a 2-time state top 3 finisher. He is a 3-time state medalist. I mean, with Dean Peterson, who we're going to discuss in a few minutes, not wrestling this year, this could be Vincent Santaniello's time to win a state championship.
So there's Vincent Santaniello, our first finalist prediction at 126. Our next one comes to us from Bergen Catholic. Sean, who do we have?
Yeah, from Bergen Catholic, we have Joe Cangro. He's a junior. He's been overshadowed by some of his Bergen Catholic teammates over the last few years, but it seems like this could be a year for him to make a name for himself. He's a 2-time region champion. He placed 3rd in the state the last 2 years. He's going to wrestle at Harvard. And one other thing to keep in mind about him, last year the 126-pound state champion was Robert Howard of Bergen Catholic. Don't be surprised if that state title stays in Oradell this year.
Absolutely. Our 2 finalist predictions there for 126. And as Steve Falk just mentioned, another wrestler that we have to mention, he won't be competing, but that's Dean Peterson from St. John Vianney.
Dean Peterson might have been the best wrestler in the state of New Jersey if he had wrestled this year. He's a 2-time state champion, a 3-time state finalist. He won his last 72 bouts in a row. He had no surgery just before practice for the season started. He decided not to compete. It's a shame that he's not competing, but he will be heard from in the future because he will wrestle collegiately at Princeton University, which has become a national power.
So those are our look at the 126 division, our predictions there. We move right along now to 132, and our first finalist prediction comes to us from Del Barton. Andrew.
Yeah, the first of many predictions from Del Barton. They've had such a strong team this year, and that's Nico Nardone. This is a guy that's been trying to get over the hump. He has a pair of 3rds and as a freshman and junior and a 5th place as a sophomore. He's committed to UPenn, and his only 2 losses last season came to defending state champions Eddie Van Tresca of Pope John and Robert Howard of Bergen Catholic. He's coming off a 10-3 win over another top contender in Kelly Dunnigan. So a guy trying to get over the hump this year for Del Barton.
And speaking of Kelly Dunnigan, Sean, our finalist prediction number 2 for the 132 class.
That's right. Kelly Dunnigan has a good shot to get right back in the state final. The Don Bosco senior was in a state final last year and lost. He's very quick. He's good on his feet. He'll be the top seed in the region tournament. And like Andrew mentioned, there are a lot of ties between Kelly Dunnigan and Nico Nardone. They're going to be teammates next year at UPenn. They wrestled earlier in the season with Nardone coming out ahead, and they actually grew up in neighboring towns. So if this is the final, there will be a lot of people in Ridgewood and Waldwick, New Jersey, very excited.
And there's an if this is the final, because there is one more wrestler at this weight that we need to mention, and he comes to us from Clearview. Tom, who do we have?
Yeah, Clearview's Ty Whalen. He's one of the better pound-for-pound wrestlers in South Jersey. He's 10-0 this year. He has 87 career wins. He placed 4th at 113 pounds last season. He's already committed to Princeton, and he's trying to become Clearview's 4th state champion, the program's first since Zach Firestone in 2016.
Another highly contested weight class to take a look at. That's our 132 predictions. We move now to 138, and we go to Steve Falk to meet our first prediction from Southern Regional.
Eddie Hummel. Eddie Hummel had one of the great runs in the wrestlebacks in the state tournament last year. He lost his first round bout, and then he won 7 consecutive wrestleback bouts to finish 3rd in the state at this weight, and this weight was loaded last year. He made even a further name for himself in the Marvin Classic on February 15th when he defeated two-time state champion Joey Oliveri of Hanover Park 7-2, and he took Oliveri to his back. He's been wrestling at 140, weighing in at 145, wrestling some at 152 this week. He's cutting down to 138 for the postseason.
And speaking of Joey Oliveri, he's our finalist prediction number 2 at 138. Andrew, let's learn more about him.
Obviously, a name that's become almost synonymous with Hanover Park wrestling over the last few years. He'll be looking to become the second 3-time state champion for Hanover Park, joining James Lavelle, who won it 3 times between 1995 and 98. He won the 106-pound title as a freshman and at 132 last season. He has just one loss this season when he wrestled up at 145 against Booton's Jason Smith, but he's been perfect since. And he'll look to add, make it a trifecta here this season.
So Hummel and Oliveri are 2 finalist predictions from our panel of experts here, but one more wrestler could make some noise at the 138 weight class, and he comes to us from St. Joseph Regional. Sean, who do we have?
Yes, we have Alex Almeida. He's a junior, a 2-time state medalist. He placed 4th last season for the Green Knights. He wrestled for Fort Lee as a freshman, and he placed 7th. He became the school's first state qualifier in 20 years. He's also the son of a wrestling coach, so he's basically grown up around the mat. And he's another one of our kids who's committed to UPenn. That seems like a common theme this year.
Absolutely. That's our 138 predictions. Moving right along now to 145. Our first finalist prediction at the 145 weight class comes to us, again, from Del Barton, Andrew.
Yeah, and that's Simon Ruiz, a guy that jumped up 2 weight classes this season after a 3rd-place finish at 132 as a freshman when he went 29-9. Last season in the state tournament, he lost to South Plainfield's Anthony White 5-3 in sudden victory in the quarterfinals, but then he won 4 straight decisions and avenged that loss to White in the 3rd-place match.
And speaking of Anthony White, our second finalist prediction for 145 is Mr. White from South Plainfield. Andy, tell us about him.
Well, like Andrew said, they had 2 great matches last year in Atlantic City. They're seeded 1-2 in this week's North 2 region tournament. So that could be a great final. White took 4th last year. It was 41-2. He signed to wrestle at Rutgers. Well, we all know there's been some pretty good South Plainfield wrestlers having success at Rutgers. So he could be the latest great name. His resume includes 3 Greater Middlesex Conference championships and 3 district titles and 2 region titles.
Will we see Ruiz versus White again? We will keep an eye, of course, on the 145 division. Up to 152 now we go. And let's meet yet another wrestler from Del Barton, Andrew.
Yeah, that's Andrewtracinsky from Del Barton, who made a big leap last season as a junior, from losing in the blood round as a sophomore to finishing as the runner-up at 145 to Collingswood's Andrew Clark in an 8-5 decision. On the way, he racked up big wins over Pope John's Kaya Cement and Hunter and Central's Colton Washleski. He's the defending Region 3 champ and a 2-time district champion.
And at the 152 weight, our next finalist prediction comes to us from Kingsway. Tom, who do we have?
That's Kingsway's Cooper Pontalondolfo. The senior became one of the favorites in this weight class thanks to a 5-2 win over Traczynski a couple weeks ago, turning Traczynski to his back in the final seconds of the bout. Pontalondolfo had a standout career at Cherokee before transferring to Kingsway this season. He's 8-0 and has 116 career wins.
This is a fun division because those are our 2 finalist predictions, but we also have 2 other wrestlers that could make some noise at this class. We start in Rumson Fairhaven, Steve Falk.
Max Brignola has actually split 2 bouts with Pontalondolfo over the last 2 months. He beat him 6-5 in the final of the Marvin Classic. He lost to him 2-0 on March 27th in sudden victory number 1. He was 8th in the state last year at 145 pounds, where he lost 4-3 in the quarterfinal to eventual state champion Andrew Clark. He's a 3-time state qualifier, and he starts off the strong part of Rumson's lineup from 152 all the way to 195.
And another option at the 152 weight class comes to us from Bergen Catholic. Sean, who do we have there?
Yeah, we have Nate Kamaskoli, actually one of the few seniors on Bergen Catholic's roster last year. He started his career at St. Peter's Prep, was there for 2 years, then transferred to Bergen Catholic as a junior. And that's really when he had his breakout season. He placed 7th in the state last year at 160 pounds. This year he bumped down a weight, so he'll be the favorite in his region this weekend. He's committed to wrestle at Coast Guard Academy, and we'll see a lot of Bergen Catholic wrestlers with him at Phillipsburg. He's one of 11 guys in the region. Surely most of them will advance.
We'll keep an eye on 152, 4 standouts there in that division. Moving up now to 160, and we go to Lyndhurst, North Arlington for our first finalist prediction from our experts. Sean, who do we have?
Yeah, Rutgers fans are going to want to keep an eye on Dylan Weaver of Lyndhurst, North Arlington. He is a 2-time state medalist who is committed to Rutgers. Now, the interesting thing about Dylan is that the last state champion from Lyndhurst is Donnie Pritzloff back in the 90s. Donnie is now an assistant coach at Rutgers, so no one wants to see him be a state champion more than Donnie. He's another kid that basically grew up around the mat. His dad, Scott, is a very well-known coach around North Jersey, so Dylan has plenty of experience. And a younger brother, Damien, who's another wrestler to watch out for in Region 2 this year.
And our second finalist prediction at 160, let's once again head down to Kingsway. Tom, who do we have there?
Yeah, it's Dakota Morris, another heavy hitter in that Dragons lineup. The junior's 8-0 and has 74 career wins. He's a 2-time district champ, and he won his first region title last season en route to a 7th place finish at 145 pounds.
So those are our 2 finalist predictions, but one more wrestler that could make some noise at 160 comes to us from Hunterdon Central. Andy, who do we have?
Well, Wasilewski is continuing the great Hunterdon Central wrestling tradition. I'm talking about a sleeper. He beat Dakota Morris 8-3 in last year's state tournament in the quarterfinals as a 7th seed. Morris was a 2nd seed. Also, he captured a Region 5 title. As a sophomore, he won 2 matches in Atlantic City. So he's definitely in the mix.
Absolutely there. That's our 160 class. Now we go to 170, and we go to Paramus for our first finalist prediction. Sean, who do we have there?
Yeah, we have senior Aaron Azeroth, and if you look up Wrestling Junkie in the dictionary, you'll probably find a picture of Aaron Azeroth. He's a kid that eats, sleeps, breathes wrestling. He tore his meniscus at the Beast of the East last season, got back on the mat as quickly as possible, and ended up taking 2nd in the state. If you know Aaron, you know he's not satisfied with that. He's been wrestling a ton throughout the offseason to get to the top step of the podium. The interesting thing about this weight is he could see another Bergen County wrestler in the region final and then again in the state final, and that would be Michael Delegate of St. Joe's Regional. He placed 4th in the state last year as a freshman. He's big, tall, funky, very athletic kid. This is another example where they met earlier this season. Azeroth had a 5-2 win over Delegate on opening day. So, again, it'll be interesting to see if that's a matchup this weekend, how they face off.
That's such a great picture of Aaron there, smiling as he's on the mat. Pretty safe to say he's pretty comfortable there on the mat at this 170 weight class. Sean, thank you for both of those. Up to 182 we go now, and we head to High Point for our first finalist prediction. Andrew, who do we have there?
Brian Saldano. Maybe didn't know much about him as a freshman, but now everyone knows his name. Going to Rutgers. Last season as a sophomore, he won 38 bouts, and 29 came by pin. His lone loss was out of state. And then at the state tournament, 4 of his victories came by pinfall to win High Point's first state title since 2011. Just a dominating performance against Dante Stefanelli of Del Barton in the final. And he's only wrestled twice this season for his high school team, but that doesn't mean that he hasn't had some big results. He was most outstanding wrestler at the Mobbin and won a Super 32 title in the fall.
And at 182, our next prediction comes to us from Steve Falk. We have a wrestler out of Rumson Fairhaven.
Jack Kelly, who is a senior, was 5th in the state last year at 170 pounds. He lost a 6-4 decision in the semifinal to Howell's 2-time state finalist and current rider wrestler Shane Wietzmer. He's been dominant this year. Rumson, of course, hasn't wrestled in a couple of weeks because they had a COVID issue shutdown. He's been dominant this year. He's the number 1 seed in the Central region. And this weight after Soldano, almost anything can happen.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye on 182. Up to 195 we go, and we stay with Steve Falk for our first finalist prediction. We have a wrestler from St. John Vianney.
Blake Clayton, who is a senior. This weight actually opened up a lot when the defending state champion Martin Cosgrove of Camden Catholic broke his hand a couple of weeks ago. And also last year's state finalist David Zuber, who we'll talk about later, moved up to heavyweight. Clayton was third in the state at 182 pounds last year. His only loss in the state tournament was to John Pansnansky of Colonia, who was dominant and won the state championship and finished fourth in the NCAA at 184 pounds as a freshman at Rutgers University. So certainly no disgrace there. And with the defections at this weight, Clayton's as good as anybody, I think.
That's our first finalist prediction. For our second one, we head back to South Plainfield. Andy, who do we have here?
Well, Thomas Renna, he's one of those pin machines. He got 4 pins in last year's state tournament. In his first season as a full-time starter, he took 7th at 195. He also took District 17 and Region 5 titles in a 33-5 season. So he's just, getting better. So he's a guy to watch.
So those are officially the experts' 2 finalist predictions, but we have to mention a few other names as options at this 195 weight class, and we go to West Deptford for our first one. Tom, who do we have there?
Yeah, Cody Thurston, a really strong kid. He wrestled at 220 last year and placed 8th in the state. This year he's 12-0. He's got 7 pins and a tech fall, 98 career wins. The other option is Kingsway's Kevin Pandorf. He placed 8th in the state at 182 last season. He's 6-1 this season with the 1 loss to Rumson Fairhaven's Hudson Scove. He also placed 4th at the Mobbin Classic.
And a wrestler also we need to mention that is not competing in this tournament comes to us from Camden Catholic as well.
Yeah, tough luck for the Fighting Irish in Martin Cosgrove. Broke his hand in late March. There was some hope. He was hoping for a miracle that he was going to be able to get back on the mat and wrestle, but it wouldn't heal quick enough, and he wasn't able to enter it. But he will be back next year fully healthy.
Absolutely. That's a fun division there at 195. Should be highly contested. We go to 220 now, and we go to St. Joseph Regional for our first finalist prediction. Sean, who is that?
Yeah, St. Joe's has one of the best upper weight groups in the state, and Michael's been a huge part of that. It's Michael Taranzo, a 220-pound senior. He placed 6th in the state last season. He's committed to wrestle at Oregon State. And one thing to keep in mind about him is that this is his 4th straight season wrestling at 220 pounds. There were times when he was giving up some weight at that weight class. He was about 210 this year, but he made a point in the offseason to bulk up, so now he's right around 220. So he could be even more dangerous than last year when he was on the state podium.
That's the first finalist prediction from our experts. Our second one comes to us from Williamstown. Tom, who do we have there?
Yeah, it's Mike Mesita, big physical kid. He placed 3rd in the state last year at 195 while wrestling for St. Augustine. Transferred to Williamstown right before the beginning of this season. He's a 2-time region champ, 3-time district champ, probably the best pound-for-pound wrestler in South Jersey. He won the 220 title at the Mobbin Classic, and he's 4-0 with Williamstown this season. He's trying to become Williamstown's 2nd state champion, joining Brett Denovi, who won the title in '88.
Our 2 finalist predictions there. And another notable non-competing that we have to mention comes to us from Del Barton. Andrew, who is that?
Yeah, that's PJ Casal. Electing to forego the tournament to compete at the Cadet Nationals. That'll be taking place April 23rd. A guy that said, I spoke with him last week, just this opportunity only comes once in a lifetime. So gonna elect to do that rather than competing at the state tournament this year after winning it as a sophomore.
So that is 220, our predictions there. And last but not least, we head to 285. Steve Falk, once again, we find ourselves at Brick Memorial.
David Zuber, who might be one of the most fun wrestlers on the shore because he can throw anybody from anywhere at any time. And he was a controversial stall call away from perhaps winning a state championship last year against Martin Cosgrove of Camden Catholic at 195 pounds. He split bouts with last year's state champion Jimmy Mullen of St. Joseph Montvale back in January. He beat him, I think, 5-4 in the second bout. And he's also pinned one of the top contenders at this division this year, who we're going to talk about in a few minutes, John Odonnell from Towns River North.
Yeah, and I was going to say, we'll keep it right with you, because our second finalist prediction, we keep it at the shore. And Steve, as you just said, John Odonnell, Toms River North.
And there's a good chance Zuber and Odonnell are going to see each other this weekend at Hudson Central. They wrestled on April 1st. It was 2-0 at the start of the third period when Odonnell tried a Granby roll and Zuber caught him. O'Donnell almost locked a cradle in the second period, but Zuber then broke the cradle and reversed him. O'Donnell really kind of exploded onto the scene at the Marvin Classic when he won that championship with a 5-3 win over Paramus Catholic's Max Ricciardi. And in the semifinal of that tournament, he pinned last year's seventh place finisher, Liam Akers of North Hunterdon. O'Donnell is certainly, in my opinion, in the mix after Zuber.
Mm-hmm. And one more wrestler in the mix at 285 comes to us from North Hunterdon. Andy, who do we have there?
Well, Steve just mentioned Liam Akers. Sophomores don't always have success at a heavyweight, but Akers got physically stronger throughout the season. He entered the state tournament as the 18th seed, put on a good run, took 7th last year, finished 38-6. Now he's just a year older and stronger at heavyweight, so he's settling into the position, and he's in the mix to place again.
And one more non-competing wrestler that we have to mention at 285 comes to us from St. Joe's Regional. Sean, who do we have there?
Absolutely. It's Jimmy Mullen of St. Joe's Regional. He was the state champion last year at heavyweight. He was the first freshman to ever win the state heavyweight title. But similar to PJ Casale, he's opting out of the state tournament this year to compete in a national tournament. He's a guy with a big personality and big talent. He wrestles more like a middleweight than a heavyweight. He goes out and gets takedowns after another. We're used to seeing 2 1s and 3 2s in heavyweights, those slow, deliberate matches. Not the case with Jimmy. He's a very athletic, fun guy to watch, and he'll definitely be missed this year in the postseason.
Absolutely. So there you have it, from 106 to 285, our panel of wrestling experts, their finalist predictions for the state tournament. We do have some dark horses, though, that we want to nominate from each region. These are wrestlers that could come out of nowhere and who knows, maybe even win it all, but definitely some guys to keep an eye on. And we're going to start at the shore with Steve Falk, and we have a wrestler from Rumson Fairhaven to keep an eye on.
With one of the most famous last names in the history of New Jersey wrestling. Hudson Scove is from the Scove family of Long Branch. Luke Scove was a 3-time state champion, a 3-time NCAA All-American. Jude Scove was a state champion and an NCAA champion. Andrew Scove was a state champion and an NCAA All-American. Hudson Scove is only lost. He had a loss this year to Seton Hall Prep, but he put a name for himself and put himself in the mix when he beat Kingsway's Kevin Pandor 5-2 on March 27th. If lineage counts for anything, then Hudson Scove can certainly be a factor.
Our dark horse out of the Central Jersey region comes to us from Bridgewater Raritan. Andy, who do we have there?
Well, we got Nick Sacco. He's a senior. As a freshman, he took 2nd in Region 4 at 113. But the last 2 seasons were kind of tough. Didn't get out of the region, but he's still a quality wrestler. And March 31st, he beat Watchung Hills' Blake Banna, who took 6th last year in the state. And Banna's another guy to watch, but Sacco certainly said, "Hey, don't forget about me. I'm back." And he also comes from a wrestling family. His brother Matt and a cousin Joe Sacco from South Plainfield were both state place winners in 2019.
And out of South Jersey, a wrestler to keep an eye on, Tom, comes to us from Woodstown.
Yeah, I really like this Hunter Gandy. Really tough kid, wrestling at 145. He's a senior. He's the active leader in South Jersey with 117 career wins. He has two Region 8 titles, and he's going for a 3rd region title this weekend, but it won't be easy. He's got Toms River East, Michael Conklin. But Gandy is certainly someone to watch in that weight class.
And a dark horse out of North Jersey, we go to Paramus Catholic.
Yeah, I'll keep the running theme of family ties. I have Max Acharya of Paramus Catholic. He's a sophomore heavyweight. He was a state qualifier last year at 220 pounds. And wrestling fans may remember his brother Peter Acharya won a state title at Don Bosco a few years ago, now wrestles at Buffalo. The interesting thing about Max is he could have followed his brother's path and gone to Don Bosco, but he instead decided to go to Paramus Catholic. Now, we have Paramus Catholic in our statewide wrestling poll this year, but they're generally not known as a wrestling school. In fact, They've only had 2 state medalists in their entire history. So Coach Sean Piella always used to say, come to Paramus Catholic and be our Jabril Peppers. Be the guy that puts a program on the map and you'll be remembered forever. And when Max Acharya came to Paramus Catholic, the word from John was, we found our Jabril Peppers. His name is Max Acharya.
Certainly someone to keep an eye on in the tournament. And last but not least, out of Morrison, Sussex, another dark horse comes to us at 195 from Pope John. Andrew, who do we have?
Nick Lodato from Pope John. It seems like this 195 weight class is wide open. He's kind of carried the banner for Pope John this season after they had 3 state champs 2 years ago. He enters this year's tournament with a Greater Middlesex County title and District 18 title. The Piscataway transfer was 1 win away from getting a podium spot this season. He'll be the number 2 seed in North 1.
Well, this was fun. There's all of our predictions. Thank you all for sharing that, and we'll certainly see how things play out once the tournament gets underway. That is going to wrap up our special live state wrestling tournament preview. I'd like to thank our panel of wrestling experts for joining us and our viewers for following along with us. Thank you to Steve, Andy, Sean, Tom, and Andrew. Also a big thanks to Paul Wood, Tanya Breen, Miguel Fernandez, Doug Hood, and Mike Pedagano behind the scenes, and the many others that helped make this show possible. I'm Ryan. Thank you for watching. For complete coverage of the state wrestling tournament, stay with the sites of the USA Today Network, APP.com, NorthJersey.com, MyCentralJersey.com, CourierPostOnline.com, DailyRecord.com, and NJHerald.com. We're all looking forward to this tournament. I know you are too. Thank you for watching, and happy wrestling.